everybody. Love that short intro. So today we're starting on page 570 with item 12, unless it's on, yes, item 12, but we're going to review back from item 11. You remember Marcos?
Hey guys, good to be with you again. Aran's away for a few weeks.
He'll be back next week.
Next week.
But I'll be gone.
2 weeks. Oop. You hear me well?
Hello, hello, test. Hi. Let's try that again. It's okay.
Well, no.
Hello.
You're
Hello.
fine, guys.
Oh, you can hear us? Okay, great.
Good? Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, so you'll have to tolerate me for a lesson. As usual, when we get into the study of Pticha, Preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah, any Kabbalistic study, we always want to remember why we're studying, and that's the more important reason than the actual what we're studying anyway. So I'll just quickly read the famous item number 155 from Introduction to the Study of the 10 Sfirot. If you want to follow with me, it's on page 373 of Kabbalah for the Student. That just reminds us why we're studying, which is really to awaken as it says here, to awaken the lights that surround our souls, to draw the surrounding light, the Or Makif. That's why we're here. It's good, everyone's settling in, getting in our seats and everything. And we'll go through this item a little bit, and then we'll get into, actually get into the study of Preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah. So item 155 from Introduction to the Study of the 10 Sfirot. Therefore, we must ask, why then did the Kabbalists obligate each person to study the wisdom of Kabbalah? Indeed, there is a great thing in it, worthy of being publicized. There is a wonderful, invaluable remedy to those who engage in the wisdom of Kabbalah. Although they do not understand what they are learning, through the yearning and the great desire to understand what they are learning, they awaken upon themselves the lights that surround their souls. So let's help each other be in that great desire to understand what we're learning. Understanding means attainment. To really be in these actions, as difficult as it might appear, this material, it's really just discussing you, me, all of us at our most fundamental levels beyond what we can currently perceive. But the more we study it, the closer we can come to it. There was actually, just quickly before we get in, sorry, Dan, there was a question in the daily lesson yesterday. In the daily lesson or in the Zohar lesson, I can't remember now, but in one of those lessons, kind of like, why is this study so attractive? You remember that one? It's like, why is this study of Talmud Sfirot, where, you know, here in the daily lessons and in Kabbalah lessons in general, we're studying it for like an hour a day, every day. And you know, no one understands what's going on, and everyone approaches it with this great desire to understand it. But what makes it so attractive, even though it's like so hard to understand, what makes people, you know, really glue themselves to it and really get into it? And it was a good question. It was actually, it was in the Talmud Sfirot lesson of yesterday. If you want to find it, it's there in the archive, kabbalamedia.info. And what I remember the answer was just because it is like really discussing us like our true selves. It's discussing the truth at such a fundamental root, where even though we don't understand what's going on at our current level till we attain it, it just, there's this clarity to it. There's this something very special there that just explains something so true, so raw. So let's help us really connect to that above everything we currently know, and I'm willing to hand it over to Dan.
Thanks, Marcos. Yeah, we should remember that we're not, even though we're together right now studying live, just this class, we're also studying together with everybody watching the daily lesson right now live at 3 o'clock, and it's something, you know, we can switch over to when we're done here. I know Marcos and I will head upstairs to continue watching it, and I think that'll be just in time maybe for some study of the 10 Sfirot, if that's what we're doing today. But I know that as we come closer to the Congress, then a lot of the focus is dedicated there as Congress preparation. So I don't know if you know, I'm sure you do. There's Congress in Italy coming up. When?
Next weekend from Friday through till Sunday. You can, if you go on our websites, you'll see the banners there everywhere. You can check out the schedule. It'll be broadcast on Cab TV. And you can also find mirror congresses close to you. If you can't find it anywhere through CabU, you can always send an email to the CabU support to find where there's local gatherings. It's always good to join in.
So that's kind of the spirit that we're in today, this morning and afternoon and evening, it looks like, from the Zoom cameras. Okay, so let's begin. Kind of, we did item 12 2 weeks ago. It's on page 570, and we're also going to be referencing some of the diagrams in the back on page 820, 819, as we kind of begin talking about the kind of the four aspects, or as they're labeled here, the four phases of direct light. And
819.
Yeah, we'll be around 819, somewhere there, and so we can kind of keep that in reference. But of course, I'll be attempting to draw some of this stuff. So let's see. So let's read item 11 on page 570 as review from 2 weeks ago, and then kind of see where we're at.
Item 11, okay. So we're on page 570 of Kabbalah for the Student, Preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah. We'll start at item number 11 here. Now you can understand the real difference between spirituality and corporeality. Anything that contains a complete desire to receive in all its aspects, which is Bechina Dalet, is considered corporeal. This is what exists in all the elements of reality before us in this world. Conversely, anything above this great measure of desire to receive is considered spirituality. These are the worlds Abiyah, that's Atzilut, Briya, Yetzirah, Asiyah, above this world, and the whole reality within them. Now you can see that the whole issue of ascents and descents described in the upper worlds does not relate to an imaginary place, but only to the four discernments in the will to receive. The farther it is from Bechina Dalet, the higher it is considered to be. And conversely, the closer it is to Bechina Dalet, the lower it is considered to be.
Okay, so we remember that the word Bechina that we'll use liberally today comes from the word, it's basically the word discernment, as in we discern that there's a difference between two things, or we discern something out of nothing, I guess, because in the first Bechina, Keter, Bechinat Shoresh, kind of the root. You know what? Let's just take a look. So, in the beginning, the Creator created the will to receive, and the thought to why did He do that? Because He's the will to bestow. He's the desire to bestow entirely, and that thought, that desire to bestow, is called Keter, or Bechina Shoresh. So let's draw that as a circle today. So we don't have any circle tools on this magical little tablet, so we're just gonna hopefully go like almost. All right, so that's our circle, and that is our. We're going to draw it a little bit differently today. Take a look at a different aspect. So we're used to kind of doing this. Maybe I'll draw it along the side for our familiarity. So we have, this little arrow coming from apparently out of nowhere, and that nowhere is called Atzmuto. Atzmuto is the essence of the Creator, the unattainable, unknowable essence. Atzmu. Muto. It just means His essence. His essence. Okay. And His essence is unattainable only simply because of the rules of existence, of physics, of whatever, in the sense that we can only attain what we perceive and what enters our senses of perception. In this world, in this corporeal world, we have 5 corporeal organs of perception, and sight, hearing, sound, and all those. No, sight, hearing, and sound. Those are 2 overlapping ones. So you know what I mean. Sight, touch, hearing, mostly sight and hearing that we're relying on right now, unfortunately. And these senses, if we look at them carefully, like hearing, for example, you're hearing my voice. And so what is it doing? So it's coming out of speakers, or in Marcus's case, directly through the air. But in your case, you're hearing it coming out of speakers. And those speakers are doing something very similar to what my vocal cords are doing, which is vibrating the air. That vibration travels through the air, and it vibrates our eardrum with the same exact frequency. And you can think of that like the eardrum itself is coming into similarity of form with the vibrations in the air. And that similarity of form allows us to perceive something, because now it's like inside of us. It's our eardrum that's doing it. Now it's a part of us that's doing it. And then it sends a signal to the brain and so forth. So here, the problem with Atzmuto, the creator's essence, is that the first thing that we it's like the thing that radiates even out of the creator is already kind of interpreted by us. And that thing is a thought of creation. That thought of creation is the 0th, or the root phase. Root phase. Let's call it root, or 0, or getter. And that is the first thing that we perceive coming out of him. So the point here is that we don't actually attain him, we just attain what we perceive from him. And that thought is to delight the creatures. In delighting the creatures, this thought, immediately being the all-powerful creator, kind of snaps his fingers and creates a desire to receive all the pleasure that he wants to bestow. That desire occurs within that thought. So we kind of draw it like this. And that desire is Pchina Aleph, the first discernment that the creature discerns. Pchina Aleph, I'm going to call it 1, or the letter Aleph. This will be 0. 0. Aleph, and it's called Chokhmah. Chokhmah is the actual desire to receive, the desire to enjoy. And we're going to go over a great allegory today. Actually, I should kind of hurry it up a little bit. We're going to go over a great allegory that kind of talks about the whole basis of this interaction that the creature has with the creator. So that's Chokhmah, and Chokhmah is now this discernment of the creature wanting to enjoy this pleasure that the creator wishes to endow upon it. That's Chokhmah. And then what happens? And then being inside of Keter, this desire, this Chokhmah, this will to receive, now suddenly coming into equivalence of form, like being kind of like forced together with the creator's thought of creation, of bestowing, takes upon that quality. It's like the classic example is if you have a glass and you pour hot water into it, the hot water takes on, the glass takes on the properties of the hot water, like it becomes hot itself. So in this case, the desire, which has this light inside of it that the creator intended for, it takes on the properties of the light. And the only property of the light really in our case, as far as we're concerned, is that it wants to bestow. It's pure bestowal, it's the desire to bestow, it's the creator. So it takes upon that property, and then it in turn wishes to also bestow. And that new desire that's born from having those two together is called Pchinat Bet. Pchinat Bet, or 2. Bet looks like this. Pchinat Bet. And its name is Bina. So now the creature, or this will to receive, wants to bestow. So it goes on and tries to figure out how exactly it's going to do that. So there's some back and forth that we'll go over a little bit later in this lesson, but really it realizes that it can receive in order to bestow. And that'll somehow bring it back to to its goal, which is to bestow to the creator. And this reception, in order to bestow, is the next Pticha called Tiferet, or Zer Anpin. Pticha Gimel, looks like that. And we'll call it, what does he call it here? We'll call it Zer Anpin, okay? Because mostly from here on out, we'll refer to it as Zer Anpin. So Zer Anpin, this is how we abbreviate in Hebrew, by the way. So instead of, in English, we would do something like, if we have initials, we would do something like this, ZA, right? But in Hebrew, you kind of mush all the consonants together, add the last one, and do something like that. So that's why we have this like convention of abbreviation. So that's Zer Anpin. So Zer Anpin now is this quality of like figuring out that, wait a second, I can receive in order to bestow. That's a new thing. When attempting to do this, or when trying to do this, going through this process, it realizes that there's actually a secret pleasure hidden inside the thought of creation, which goes beyond what Chokhmah thought to begin with. So Chokhmah, we can kind of think of it as, somebody that's hungry, that's just enjoying the food that's given to it on the table, like an animal almost, or an infant. Whereas the next phase that's going to come out, Malchut, is much more profound than that. Malchut is the real Kli, and it actually exists to enjoy the adhesion, the dvekut with the creator. And that's the greatest pleasure, not by coincidence. So the next phase comes out. And these are all supposed to be circles, by the way, but I'm kind of keeping it straight for the labels. And this is Pticha Dalet, 4, and it's called Malchut. Malchut. Okay, so so let's draw them over here in the familiar way. So this is Chokhmah. Chokhmah. Binah, that wishes to bestow. Let's do Aleph, Bet, Pticha Bet, Pticha Gimel, which receives in order to bestow, and Pticha Dalet, that receives and enjoys the adhesion and closeness, proximity, oneness with the creator. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Root. So this is 1, so I'll label them again, 2, 3, 4. And then you'll kind of get used to hearing it over and over. So Dalet is 4, Dalet is 4, Gimel is 3, and so on. And then just make that connection. It's only 4 letters that we can remember, but it'll make us that much cooler by using the letters. Okay, so that's 11, and that's basically as far as we got. So what we read in item 11 is that the closer we get here to this section over here, the more corporeal things get. So if this is the essence of the creator out here, and then this is the thought of creation, and so on and so forth, as we get toward the middle, it's defined as corporeal, whatever that means. So we'll look into that a little bit later. And I think one thing I want to mention is that, and this is for way later on, I don't even think he mentions this at all in the preface or the Pticha, but Baal Salam in the study of the 10 Sfirot describes these circles as kilim, which is a plural of kli, or vessel, kilim of, or de igulim. And I just want to expose you to this term really early on, just so it doesn't surprise you later.
That's in part 2 of TAS.
Part 2, excellent, yeah. Kilim de igulim, and igulim are circles. So I'm going to translate it here. Circles. This is as opposed to kilim that are of the yosher, which is the, kind of line. So we have two types of kilim. We have these circles, and then those of you that have taken this course previously know that in a second, maybe even a little bit today, we're going to start drawing, a partzuf, and it comes out as a line, and so on, and it has a rosh, toch, and sof, and so forth. And this is what we talk about basically throughout the entire rest of this course. But I wanted to point out that early on, all the way in the beginning, the first thing, the kilim that the creator created, and that's kind of their, that's part of their like uniqueness and definition, is that they come directly from the creator. This structure that we're going to talk about today comes from the creature. This is the creature working with the influence of the creator, and this is the influence of the creator himself. These are the kind of the vessels that the creator emanated for the creature to begin processing. As far as the creator is concerned, he doesn't really care about this whole thing. He doesn't care what the creature's hang-ups are, or like complexes are, or whatever, to try to figure out how to get all of the pleasure that he wants to give it. He just projects pleasure into the creature, and it's kind of up to the creature to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, so just as well, if I can just add just one little takeaway from this item, he's also talking about the difference between spirituality and corporeality. Dan talked about that, but also he says higher means further away from Bechina Dalet, so the closer it is to the root, meaning more bestowal, more spiritual, means higher, because that comes a lot in the wisdom of Kabbalah and preface to the wisdom of Kabbalah in Talmud Sefirot. We always talk about ascents and descents, that something rises and falls. What does it mean that it rises and falls? Rising means it goes up more towards the creator. Falling or descending means it comes down towards that corporeal state more. So that's higher and lower whenever we talk about it. More bestowal and more reception. And also just one more thing, if it can be added, it's like we have to understand as well that in Hebrew, these terms kind of give just a different feeling. I'll just give it for a bit of a flavor. Like spirituality is ruchaniyut. Ruach, it's also the word used for wind. Corporeality is gashmiyut, where like geshem is like the word for rain. So you see how these words connect in such a way, like something more like kind of less tangible, more like spiritual, wind. You don't make those clear connections, but then something also that materializes, something that comes down, kind of like how rain comes down and reaches Bechina Dalet. I don't want to get us confused with that. It's just something that gives a bit of a flavor. Item 12.
No, that's great. Yeah. Yes, please. Item 12.
Item 12. We should understand that the essence of the creature and of creation as a whole is only the will to receive. Anything beyond it is not part of creation, but extends from his essence. It's atzmoto, by way of existence from existence. Thus, why do we discern this will to receive as aviyut, thickness, and turbidity? And we are commanded to cleanse it through Torah and mitzvot, to the point that without it, we will not achieve the sublime goal of the thought of the creation.
So we discussed the word turbidity 2 weeks ago, and it kind of refers to, I think it's like a very technical term, but it refers to just like a muddiness in this case, like a liquid or something. Like if you had like a very dirty liquid that you can't really see through, that has many particles in it, that would be its turbidity. So the question is, why are we commanded then to discern this, to purify this will to receive, if it comes from the creator? The creator created it. Why do we have to now like actually do stuff? Why do we have to do work? And this is a question that we probably ask ourselves every day, is why do we have to go through this process of making it so hard in purifying this will to receive that was given from him? Why couldn't he have given it automatically? Why couldn't he just make the perfect system already, and we can be just enjoying the adhesion to the creator as his created being, and that would be it? Why do we have to go through this extremely extended process of Big Bang and 14 billion years of evolution, Earth, possibly a few hundred years on Mars, until we finally figure out how to get back to the creator? So that's the question posed in item 12. Feel free to add anytime. If not, we can go on to item 13.
I'm looking at it. It's a good nugget there to get us into the next part. Item 13. The thing is that as corporeal, okay, so I'll actually start from item 12 because it's good to go through the question. So we'll go from item 12 and move into 13. Okay, so we should understand that the essence of the creature and of creation as a whole is only the will to receive. Anything beyond it is not part of creation, but extends from his essence, atzmuto, by way of existence from existence. Thus, why do we discern this will to receive as aviut, thickness, and turbidity? And we are commanded to cleanse it through Torah and mitzvot, to the point that without it, we will not achieve the sublime goal of the thought of creation. Also, as we learn, Torah and mitzvot means the drawing the light and applying these corrections that we go through in the path. You know, all this purpose of the study is that we correct ourselves. Correcting ourselves, you can say it's doing this process of Torah and mitzvot. Torah, from the word instruction, light, where we draw that light, and mitzvot, meaning the corrections upon the will to receive that we make. So, you know, he's saying, why do we have to go through all this work of correcting ourselves to a point that without it we will not achieve that sublime goal of the thought of creation? Item 13. The thing is that as corporeal objects are separated from one another by remoteness of location, spirituals are separated from each other by the disparity of form between them. This can be found in our world too. For example, when two people share similar views, they like each other, and the remoteness of location does not cause them to draw far from one another. Conversely, when their views are far, they are hateful of each other, and proximity of location will not bring them any closer. Thus, the disparity of form in their views removes them from each other, and the proximity of form in their views brings them closer to each other. If, for example, one's nature is the complete opposite of another's, they are as far from one another as the east from the west. Similarly, all matters of nearness and remoteness, coupling and unity that unfold in spirituality are but measures of disparity of form. They depart from one another according to their measure of disparity of form and become attached to one another according to their measure of equivalence of form. Yet, you should understand that although the will to receive is a mandatory law in the creature, as it is the essence of the creature and the proper kli for reception of the goal of the thought of creation, it nonetheless completely separates it from the emanator. This is so because there is disparity of form to the point of oppositeness between itself and the emanator. This is because the emanator is complete bestowal without a shred of reception, and the creature is complete reception without a shred of bestowal. Thus, there is no greater oppositeness of form than that. It therefore follows that this oppositeness of form necessarily separates it from the emanator.
So that explains why the creature is entirely separate from the creator. That still begs the question of, okay, but why would you make it separate from the creator? You're the creator. You can do whatever you want. Why would you initially emanate the creature in a way that it was entirely separate from the creator? So we'll get to that in a second, but remember that the goal is to bestow, is to delight the created being. And the creature, so the goal really, if we look at the four phases of direct light, is so Keter is the desire is that goal, that actual thought of creation, which created Chokhmah. And then when Bina kind of comes out or appears, Bina now kind of takes over and says, okay, from here on out, I'm going to try to make myself as much as Keter as possible, as resembling Keter as possible. My goal is now to return back to Keter immediately. Like the first thing it does is it thinks, I want to be like Keter. So everything that follows, both Zerampin and Malchut, are all Bina's attempts to return back to the source, to be back like Keter. So that's why it creates these things, not just it does follow kind of like this logical process of getting more and more and more pleasure, but that pleasure comes with Bina's calculation of doing it for the sake of the creator. So Malchut is created by Bina just in order to become similar to Keter, to make it eventually similar to Keter. And so since he doesn't really address why we need to be opposite, why we need to be created opposite to come back to the source in this article. So we could just say that, and I think we probably discussed it before, is that in general, a vessel, any vessel, kind of we perceive things through contrast. We can't perceive, if you have white on a white background and everything is perfectly white and perfectly, or any color, green on green, whatever it is, then you can't perceive anything. You can't discern anything. But having contrast allows you to discern something. So basically, if the creator had created the will to receive and filled it with light, that's exactly what we have in Chokhmah. That's exactly what we have in Chokhmah. It's just the will to receive entirely full of light, with no deficiencies, no almost discernments. There's nothing. It's like an infant in the womb, not an infant, an embryo in the womb. Just enjoying it, not doing anything, not having any discernments. There's no kind of contrast. There's no drama. There's no resolution. There's no catharsis. There's nothing. So that's the problem. So that's why we need to create something completely opposite from the creator in order to bridge the gap. And we're going to talk about that bridge today. That bridge is kind of the main part of creation. The building that bridge is our role in creation. So as much of it has been built as could be, kind of automatically, all the way down to us, the soul of Adam HaRishon, the collective soul. And now the job of that soul is to finish building that bridge, finish that process. So that was 13.
I might also just illuminate something here just to make us feel a little bit of what it's saying, because he asks this question in item 12. That why do we need to go through all these corrections and everything to correct this thing that was created? Why do we call it aviyut and turbidity when it comes from such a source? And then he answers that it's because it's opposite in form, and he even gives this point of how when there's people with two opposite views, they hate each other. We can try to feel that how much we being in this will to receive, or the will to receive in its full form of being a will to receive, how much it's actually opposite to the creator, how much we actually hate that quality of bestowal. Imagine now if you were suddenly clicked on to bestow all the time, like against your will, aware of it, it'd be something completely terrible. It'd be like being on fire all the time. We don't even understand how much we hate that quality of bestowal, how much we hate that very creator that created us. And this is the whole reason we have to go through these corrections, because in order to experience that in a conscious, aware way where we agree to it, we need to go through a long process of correcting ourselves, correcting our intention above that very will to receive, above that quality that's opposite and hateful of that quality of bestowal due to its oppositeness. And that's the whole reason for it, that we want to come into equivalence of it in our agreement and rise above that innate hatred we have towards such a quality of bestowal. It's like you see two people in this world, as he gives the example, let's just take politics or something, people on an extreme left and on an extreme right, how much such people hate each other. It's even like infinite times more than that, what this separation and distance is between us and the creator. So that's what we come here to correct, and that's what we come here. We have no perception of that right now. We don't feel what that is. We need to reach a state where we are even ready to feel such a thing. But through our work, through drawing the light, we come to a point where we reveal such things, and we get the tools to rise above them and come closer. So let's keep focusing on that intention, and we'll move into item 14.
Yeah, just like at the end of item 13. So what happened? So what's the situation? The situation is that Malchut now, the will to receive, the kind of the full desire, the vessel to receive all the abundance from the creator, has discovered that it's completely opposite from the creator. This comes as a complete surprise because Binah did not probably attempt kind of account for that at all, but Malchut is now suddenly opposite from, and take it with a grain of salt when I say a complete surprise, because we really have no idea whether it was a surprise or not. Maybe it wasn't a surprise. It's probably all planned, but you'll hear us go back and forth between what's surprising and what's not surprising. But the point is that right now, Malchut is completely opposite from the creator, which is the worst possible state that it can be in. Okay, item 14.
Item 14. To save the creatures from this titanic separation, the Tzimtzum Aleph, first restriction, took place. It essentially separated Bchina Dalet from the rest of the Partzufim of Kedusha, holiness, in such a way that that great measure of reception remained an empty void, a space devoid of light. This is so because all the Partzufim of Kedusha emerged with a masach, a screen, erected in their Kli Malchut, so they would not receive in this Bechina Dalet. Then, when the upper light was extended and spread to the emanated being, this masach rejected it. This is regarded as striking between the upper light and the masach, which raises or choser, reflected light, from below upwards, clothing the 10 sfirot of the upper light. That part of the light that is rejected and pushed back is called or choser, reflected light. As it dresses the upper light, it becomes a kli for reception of the upper light instead of Bechina Dalet. Since afterwards the kli of Malchut had expanded by the measure of or choser, the rejected light, which rose and dressed the upper light from below upwards, and expanded from above downwards too. Thus the lights were clothed in the kelim, plural for kli, within that or choser. This is the meaning of the rosh, the head, and the guf, the body, in each degree. The zivug de'aka, coupling of striking, from the upper light in the masach, raises or choser from below upwards and dresses the 10 sfirot of the upper light in the form of 10 sfirot of rosh, 10 sfirot de rosh, meaning the roots of kelim, vessels. This is because there cannot be actual clothing there. Subsequently, when Malchut expands with that or choser from above downwards, the or choser ends and becomes kelim for the upper light. At that time, there is clothing of the lights in the kelim, and this is called the guf of that degree, that is complete kelim.
Okay, so we're going to go over that slowly, kind of paragraph by paragraph. To save the creature from this titanic separation, the Tzimtzum Aleph took place. It separated Bchina Dalet from the rest of the Partzufim in such a way that a great measure of reception remained an empty void, a space devoid of light. So if we look at what's happening here originally, when this was emanated in the 4 phases of the direct light, all of this was filled with light. So I kind of redrew it over here in a particular way. And so I drew Malchut kind of not to scale, but generally what's happening is that all of this is filled with light. Take our time and fill it with light. So this is filled with light from outside in, or from above downwards. That we'll hear about a lot. There we go. Edges. Okay. So all of this is filled with light by the creator from above downwards, by himself. So this is all the 4 phases, Keter, Chokhmah, Binah, Zerampin, and Malchut. These are the 4 phases of direct light, or 4 aspects of direct light, or Arba, 4 Pchinot of the direct light. And this is Malchut right in the middle. So what is Tzimtzum Aleph? Tzimtzum Aleph is this process, which is Malchut, how do you say, like banishing almost the light from within itself. So Malchut does this. It restricts just this part. So the light remains outside of Malchut. And we can see this diagram on page 819, 820, like somewhere around there. You can take a look. And I really just like rediscover those diagrams every time we go over this. It's really something. It's really amazing. Those are diagrams by Baal Sulam. They look more or less like this. Okay, so that's Malchut, and it removes all of this light out from itself. So it's no longer receiving the light. What is the light, by the way? So the light in this case is the pleasure that Malchut is getting directly from the creator. So Malchut is a particular desire. It's like a lock. And the pleasure for that specific desire is the key. Every vessel has its own type of desire. The desire for water, the desire for food, the desire for whatever you want, all different desires that we have at any moment, they all require their special type of pleasure. So Malchut has banished its own pleasure out from itself, and that's Tzimtzum Aleph. Okay, so and why does this happen, by the way? In fact, to look at the reason for this, kind of the motivation of this, we have to go back to item 4 on page 567. And now we can even understand perhaps a little bit more what's written there. So item 4, I'm reading on page 567. The reason why the will to receive must cascade by the 4 above mentioned discernments and Anbiya is that there's a great rule concerning the kilim. All of these are kilim. The expansion of the light and its departure makes the kli fit for its task. That's the rule. That means that a vessel must be emptied of the pleasure that's inside of it in order to make it fit for the role that it serves, which is receiving the full abundance of the creator. So by filling this vessel first and then emptying it, now all of a sudden we instill into it what's called a craving. Now Malchut originally kind of got all that pleasure for free, adhesion with the creator, great, meaning of life, perfect state, and all of a sudden that's gone. And by removing it, now we've developed a true desire, a craving, a yearning for that pleasure, which is, of course, not by coincidence, intended by the creator all the way from the beginning, which we're not that far from. And we're going to see this process over and over and over in the process of developing these kilim. So that's kind of why, theoretically, why Tzimtzum Aleph took place. If we're looking for a reason for why did it happen, so it wasn't maybe too surprising to Binah that happened. So what do we have now? An empty void, a space devoid of light. This is so because all the parts of him, I'm continuing with second paragraph of item 14, page 571. This is so because all the parts of him of Kedusha emerged with a Masach, a corrected Masach, erected in their Kli Malchut, that they would not receive in this Pchina Dalet. Then when the upper light was extended and spread to the emanated being, this Masach rejected it. This is regarded as striking between the upper light and the Masach, which raises Or Choser from below upwards, clothing the 10 Sfirot of the upper light. Wow, there was a lot of terms there. So let's go over these, guys. Let's move this out of the way over here. Okay. When this is so, the parts of him Kedusha emerged with a screen erected in their Kli Malchut, so they would not receive this Pchina Dalet. So let's draw this screen. This screen was erected here. Let's draw it blue. Yeah. So this is a screen that the creature erected around Malchut. This is totally symbolic. This way. So that's it. That's the screen that now no light will get in, period. Tzimtzum Aleph means that we're no longer receiving for the sake of reception. That's what the restriction is on. Malchut will no longer receive for its own sake. Because, after all, the goal is to be like the creator, and the creator doesn't receive for his own sake. He doesn't receive at all. He only gives, only bestows. So Malchut, in order to become like the creator, will stop receiving for its own sake, period. So at this point, we switch from Kilim de Gulim, the circular vessels, to straight vessels, Kilim de Yoshur. And now, okay, in the very next sentence, then when the upper light was extended and spread to the emanated being, this masach rejected it. So now when we talk about light striking a screen, we're going to kind of picture it like this, depict it this way. This is our screen. Screen. Whoops, screen. And you know what? I'm actually going to write masach, and we'll use the word masach from now on. Masach means screen. In fact, if you were speaking modern Hebrew, you would say that you're looking at a masach right now. So what's happening? So the light, then when the upper light was extended and spread to the emanated being, this masach rejected it. So we're going to illustrate the light being extended from the emanator like this. This is the light being extended, the upper light. Upper light being extended and being rejected by the masach. Boom. Rejected. And this light becomes or choser. Or light choser, returning or reflected. Choser means to return, returning. That's it, like returning back to the creator. This light, which raises or choser from below upwards, clothing the 10 sefirot of the upper light. That last line in this paragraph, clothing the 10 sefirot of the upper light, is just endlessly profound, what that actually means. And we'll talk about it more like in the allegory that's coming up. But the kind of the notion is that there's a new light that's being emanated now by the creature from below upwards. Below upwards means from the creature to the creator. Above downwards means from the creator to the creature. So below upwards, there's a new light that's being emanated that's somehow related to this upper light. And it's related, the relation between it is something called clothing. So the Or Choser clothes the upper light. And we'll talk about that now in a second. The part of the light that is rejected and pushed back is called Or Choser. As it dresses the upper light or clothes it, it becomes a kli for reception of the upper light instead of Pchina Dalet, since afterwards the kli of Malchut has expanded by the measure of Or Choser, the rejected light, which rose and clothed the upper light from below upwards, expanded from above downwards too, and expanded from above downwards too. Thus the lights were clothed in the kelim within that Or Choser. So here in this paragraph, Baal Salam basically covers all of existence and all of creation, all of the relationship between the creature and the creator. And so, hold on, let's see if he, so let's keep going. So this is the meaning of Rosh and Guf in each degree. So this is the Or Choser expanding upwards. And he also mentions that it expands from above downwards too. From above downwards is from this line down. And that looks like this. So somehow, by clothing the upper light, something happens that allows the light to expand downwards. And downwards in this diagram is actually into Malchut, inside. So let me erase these guys because that might be a little bit confusing. So above downwards is into this circle somewhere. We'll see where. Above downwards too, the lights were clothed in the kilim within that Or Choser. This is the meaning of Rosh and Guf in each degree. So Rosh, let's move these guys over. Something like that. And so this part becomes what's called a Rosh, the calculating part of the vessel. And this part down here is the Guf. In each degree. The Zivug Da'aka, coupling of striking, zivug daka, is kind of this whole process. What's happening here in the Masach. From the upper light in the Masach, raises Or Choser from below upwards and dresses the 10 Sfirot of the upper light in the form of 10 Sfirot de Rosh. So this becomes 10 Sfirot de Rosh, meaning the roots of the Kilim. And these will be the actual Kilim. So these are the potential Kilim, and these are the roots of the Kilim. Sorry, these are the potential or the roots of the Kilim, and these are the actual Kilim. All of this will become clear very, very shortly. And the reason is because there cannot be any actual clothing here. When you're discerning what you can accept and what you can't, you're not actually consuming anything. You're just kind of deciding, planning your next step. Subsequently, when Malchut expands with that Or Choser, that's this expansion, from above downward, the Or Choser ends and becomes Kilim for the upper light. So the Or Choser ends up here. And becomes Kilim for the upper light. At that time, there's clothing of the lights in the Kilim, and this is called the Guf of that degree. So these Kilim, these vessels now that are receiving this light, are called Guf. Okay. We're ready to move on to item 15 that will hopefully explain all of this.
Mm-hmm. Also, just a little question I can raise from item 14 that can enter us into item 15. It just comes from the very beginning of item 14. Yeah, because in item 14, what happens is, in most of the preface, Baal HaSulam speaks very structurally and in terms of structures and processes. And so he just kind of moves from one thing to the next. And you see, like, to save the creatures from this titanic separation, you know, from that oppositeness of form, of reception and bestowal, the Tzimtzum Aleph took place. But, you know, we have to ask ourselves, why does it want to save itself to begin with? Well, what's the problem? You know, as Dan showed in the diagram, it was receiving light all the time, constantly being filled with pleasure. Why does it want to, what's there to be saved from? You know, what's the problem with receiving all the time? What gives it the feeling that it needs to be saved? This is what we start getting to into item 15. Okay. So you can even think of it like a little baby that's just receiving from its mother all the time, constant care, constant warmth, you know, getting everything it needs, you know, from a loving and caring mother all the time. What's there to be saved from in that state? You know, what gives it this feeling? Okay, and then this action takes place at Tzimtzum Aleph, where it's almost like a very extreme thing. That baby immediately turns into this adult that's bestowing and receiving in different kilim, receiving in kilim of Or Choser. Also, what does it mean to receive in kilim de Or Choser? Meaning receiving in vessels that are bestowing back to the Creator. Also, what's it bestowing? So all these questions come up. It's really like an extreme thing that Baal HaSulam is describing. It's just interesting because he just describes it in a very scientific, very, you know, cause and effect kind of way. But in item 15, we start getting into the into what really causes that to happen. So item 15, thus new kelim were made in the Partsufim of Kedusha instead of Bechina Dalet after Tzimtzum Aleph, first restriction. They were made of the Or Choser of the Zivug Daka in the Masach. Indeed, we should understand this Or Choser and how it became a vessel of reception, since initially it was but a rejected light. Thus, it is now serving in an opposite role from its own essence. I shall explain that with an allegory from life. Man's nature is to cherish and favor the quality of bestowal, and to despise and loathe reception from one's friend. Hence, when one comes to one's friend and he, the host, invites him for a meal, he, the guest, will decline, even if he is very hungry, since in his eyes it is humiliating to receive a gift from his friend. Yet, when his friend sufficiently implores him until it is clear that by eating he would do a big favor to his friend, he consents to eat, as he no longer feels that he is receiving a gift and that his friend is the giver. On the contrary, he, the guest, is the giver, who is doing his friend a favor by receiving this good from him. Thus you find that although hunger and appetite are vessels of reception designated to eating, and that person had sufficient hunger and appetite to receive his friend's meal, he still could not taste a thing, due to the shame. Yet as his friend implored him and he rejected him, new vessels for eating began to form within him, since the power of his friend's pleading and the power of his own rejections, as they accumulate, finally accumulate into a sufficient amount that turns the measure of reception into a measure of bestowal. In the end, he can see that by eating, he will be doing a big favor and bring great contentment to his friend by eating. In that state, new vessels of reception to receive his friend's meal were made within him. Now it is considered that the power of his rejection has become the essential vessel in which to receive the meal, and not the hunger and appetite, although they are actually the usual vessels of reception.
Yeah, so that's really the key. So this kind of describes, this is the whole principle of Kabbalah. This is how it works. This is like the most attractive thing. I remember when I learned about this, that attracted me to this whole thing is that it's such a simple concept, and it's so clean, like Marcos was talking about in the beginning of the lesson, that you just like sense like a grain of truth, not even a grain, but the whole thing is just truth in this whole, it just comes across as very pure and natural. So what's happening here? Now taking this allegory, we can actually go through these 4 phases until we get back here. And everything will hopefully be much more clear. So let's take a look at the 4 phases again. With the allegory, my favorite allegory ever, the allegory of the host and the guest. So the host and the guest. The creator is the host, and the guest is the creature. And the host loves the guest. The quality of the host is wanting to bestow to the guest. The host loves the guest more than anything, and all he wants to do is to just delight the guest as much as possible. And the host, knowing the guest more than the guest even knows himself, or herself, I guess in this case, as receiving, sets up exactly the food on the table perfectly, so that the guest would be able to enjoy it as much as possible. So what's happening here? So we have keter. Let's use this side over here. So we have keter, the root, and keter is the thought to delight this guest. And you need a guest to delight. So chokhmah is created. Aleph, Pchina Aleph is the guest kind of entering the dining room of the host and enjoying all of the food on the very, on the very first day, let's call it. So the guest comes in, sits down, and before them is this amazing banquet that's set out that details exactly what the guest wants, like in the perfect quantities and order and temperature and sweetness and saltiness and like all the perfect exact flavors, like hitting note by note, point by point, exactly what the guest is kind of created to be in the mood for. So now picture this happening over and over and over. And, maybe the first time the host invites the guest kind of has no problem with this in this allegory, okay? But then, as this happens over and over, the guest slowly, as he's like, stuffing himself or whatever, kind of looks up and sees that the host is sitting there smiling, beaming at him, enjoying all the food. And the guest kind of notices the host, and he notices something interesting is that the host almost seems to be enjoying this whole process more than the guest is enjoying the food. So the guest starts thinking to himself, that's weird. I'm sitting here eating the food. The host isn't even eating, and he seems to be enjoying this more than I am. So maybe there's like a trick here. Maybe the host actually knows something that I don't. And what the guest notices is that the host is just enjoying the fact that the guest is enjoying. The host is enjoying giving to the guest. And after a while, the guest begins to take on this property. It begins to want to do what the host is doing, because just by being in proximity with the host, it's very important that the host remains at the table while the guest is enjoying the food. So now this desire to be like the host is bina, pchina bet. So pchina aleph, this desire to just enjoy the food slowly transitions into the desire to bestow, to give back somehow to the host. The guest now realizes that the true pleasure is actually giving back to the host somehow, which is, oh, okay, wow, really interesting. Okay, so how do we do that? First thing that it does, Bina, and this is the first time that this happens, is it rejects the light. So the guest stops eating. First thing. So now the guest is not eating. And because the pleasure of every subsequent pleasure that we have here down this whole row, every subsequent pleasure annuls the previous pleasure. Like the example is like a candle before a torch, just annuls it. It pales in comparison, the previous pleasure to this newfound pleasure. And this newfound pleasure is wanting to be like the host, wanting to bestow somehow, to come to the level of the host. The guest feels this shame, this humiliation, as Baal Salam just put it in the allegory, in just simply consuming. So in wanting to be like the host, the first thing that the guest does is stop eating. I can't, how can I eat if you're not eating, and so forth. But the host now, there's a huge problem. There's like an impasse, right? Because the host wants the guest to eat. That's why the host invited him. The guest doesn't want to eat because he wants to be like the host. So there's this impasse. Until the guest realizes that, wait a second, the host really wants me to eat. That's the only thing that he wants from me. So if I eat a little bit for his sake, then perhaps that will be the thing that I can give to him. Because it's not like, I offered to bring, like a bottle of wine, maybe some dessert for this, but the host is like, no, I'm good. I really don't need anything. I have everything. I have, an infinite, wine cellar, just everything. There's nothing you can give me. So the guest comes to the realization that, okay, I need to consume some of this food for the sake of the host. So that happens here. That realization is Pinagimet, or what will later be a Zerampin. And Zerampin turns into this whole big complicated system of adapting, of receiving for the sake of bestowal, and so on. But really, as far as we're concerned, for now, it's just the guest realizing that the guest can eat for the sake of bestowal. Okay, great. So that's what the guest does. And in consuming, suddenly, there's something different now, because the guest previously, in coming in and just eating everything on the table and just enjoying it as is, wasn't taking the host into account. Now he takes the host into account. Taking the host into account is completely different because there's this aspect of intention. It's this arrow, it's the bestowing back to the host. And this bestowing back to the host does something amazing. It puts the guest in some slight equivalence of form with the host. The guest is suddenly, by doing this for the sake of the host, suddenly somehow more similar to the host than he was before. And this similarity lights up, ignites another desire, because the similarity, like we talked about, similarity of form brings things closer, and the guest feels now closer to the host. And what the guest discovers in the host is absolute love. That the host is just projecting is, the guest feels how much the host truly loves him. Like it's just this overwhelming feeling of love. And that feeling of love comes from receiving for the sake of bestowing. And all of that together is a new desire that's born, the desire for adhering to the host, adhesion, dvekut, back to the host, being one with the host. To do that, we have to receive everything for the sake of bestowal. And that's what happens here. This new desire is called Malchut, the fourth phase of the direct light. And that's exactly what happens. Now, we're back to the beginning of the lesson. Now we've gone through all of these steps. So what's the problem? Now the guest is receiving entirely for what it thinks is for the sake of the host. However, in the four phases of direct light, that is not the case. The guest discovers actually that in receiving all of this pleasure, even though he thinks he's doing it for the sake of the Creator, he's completely wrong. He's actually doing it entirely for his own sake. And that's the first realization that Malchut comes to, is that, wait a second, I'm receiving all of this pleasure. I'm enjoying it for my own sake. Like the pleasure of adhesion with the Creator. I mean, this is something we have to think about a little bit. I'm enjoying it entirely for my own sake. And all of a sudden, that realization is what separates, is what causes this titanic separation. So like, you know, distance in spirituality and similarity of form in spirituality is subjective. This is key. This is what we're going to notice. Actually, it's all subjective. It's all coming from the side of the creature, because from the side of the creator, you just have these circles of projecting abundance onto the creature, and it's all in the creature's perception, how much you can receive and how much you can take, how much you can receive and give, and so on. So now realizing that Malchut, the original Malchut that came out, is entirely receiving for its own sake, then Malchut performs the first restriction. And it kind of puts itself back to what Binah did, where it stopped receiving and tries to receive only for the sake of the creator, only for the sake of the host. And that's kind of where we are, back again after Tzimtzum Aleph. But now Malchut is doing it. It's not Binah that did it kind of automatically. It's Malchut. It's that huge craving for the abundance. That desire has pushed the light completely out of itself, has stopped eating once again, and has said, okay, I'm not going to eat at all. But now the eating isn't just the food. The eating is actually enjoying the abundance. It's enjoying being like the creator, being one with the creator. So it rejects that pleasure. That pleasure is now rejected. And I'm not going to accept that pleasure unless it's for the sake of bestowal. So now that brings us back here. This concept of the Or Choser and the upper light. And now this is something that we can finally understand. So for today. So this upper light here in the zivug, and we're going to cover this whole process is zivug da'aka'ah. Let me write that down. Zivug is coupling. Zivug is coupling or mating. And it's de, how does he write it here? De haka'a. Ha. Ka. It's like mating while striking during, like this, the striking part is the light kind of bouncing back up. And the mating is the interaction between the light and the screen.
Just while you're on this point, just saying that there's a question here from Dejan saying what instigates the zivug da'akah and the masach, which is kind of what you're getting to.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for asking. We'll do questions also, yeah, in 1 second. We have about 20 minutes left, so we're good. Okay, so the upper light. Now, the upper light, the light always shines. The light from the side of the creator is always, the creator never changes. The creator is always the will to bestow. And it's bestowing this light, shining, 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 shining on the creature. Take it, take it, take it. And the creature now, Malchut, has erected this masach and said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to do it on my terms. And my terms are do it only entirely for your sake. And so this upper light comes in, and the upper light, we can think about it. We can kind of simplify the example again to just go back to the food. So pretend that the food is everything. The food is the pleasure of being with the creator and bestowing to the creator and one with the creator and whatever. Let's take all of those pleasures and just kind of project them onto the food. So now let's talk about the food on the table. So this is the food. The upper light is the creator kind of offering the food back to the creature. The Or Choser, that's reflected by the masach, since the creature blocks all of this pleasure, refuses to take it. The Or Choser is the creature's intention to bestow back to the creator. So the more food that there is on the table and the more the creature wants that food, and the more intention there is to bestow. That means if there's infinite pleasure on the table, there's infinite desire to bestow, assuming that the masach can handle it, which it can. Also not by coincidence, since the creature was given that power by the creator. Then you have the same infinite kind of bestowal, Or Choser. So now what does it mean that the Or Choser clothes the upper light and becomes nukilim? This is the whole point. The upper light, the food on the table, is clothed by the intention to consume it for the sake of the creator. And then that becomes a new desire. So let's say there's, I don't know, let's start with something really small, just like a nice cup of tea on the table. Something very, You know, just picture something that, you know, you would enjoy, you know, like a cool, a refreshing beverage. Let's call it that, something nicely abstract, a refreshing beverage on the table. And you say, okay, that would be nice. I'm gonna hold back. I'm gonna push that back, and I'm only gonna receive it for your sake. Now, that reception for the sake of the Creator becomes the new vessel. So originally, my hunger was the vessel. My desire to be refreshed by this beverage was the original vessel, and I would drink it. I'd be like, okay, that's very nice. Now, I'm drinking it because it was given to me. Now, like, the pleasure is much greater in Malchut. The pleasure in Malchut is something like, this isn't just a refreshing beverage. This is a refreshing beverage given to me by God himself, the actual creator, the master, you know, the one that created the universe, everything, the greatest thing in existence. All that greatness is instilled in this tiny little thing. It's not just somebody, you know, some random person giving it to you. This is the most important being in all of existence that has directed this at you and is bestowing it to you out of the infinite love that you discover that he has. So suddenly it's much greater pleasure. It's more precious. And you're rejecting all of that. But now the Or Choser is the intention to receive this and enjoy it for the sake of the Creator, okay? That's the nucleus. So now when you enjoy this beverage, then you're not only you're not filling although you're enjoying it, like in a physical sense, you're actually physically enjoying it. It's feeling like some hunger or thirst or whatever. That's just like a means to the end of filling that kli, the new vessel, of doing it for the sake of the creature. And that's what these vessels are. So internally, when we say that the light spreads from above downwards, it spreads into these brand new kilim. And these new kilim are the ones that have the Or Choser, the intention to bestow back to the Creator, clothing the actual pleasure that's coming from the Creator. So that's what these are, and that fills what's called the goof of the creature. Wow. Next page. So I think we can move on.
Just quickly add, because this is a big allegory, and just like I mentioned, like Bala Sulam adds here in this structure. Like I mentioned at the beginning of item 14, it says to save the creatures from this titanic separation, and in item 15 he adds like, what's that thing that we're being saved from as creatures? The shame of being receivers from the giver. And if there's just a couple more things we can do to look at this from another angle here. I mean, what we have here is the host and the guest. We have the host giving constantly to the guest. When the guest feels the host as the giver, that's what ignites this shame. And then that's the thing that, you know, this is something we can take into our spiritual work all the time, that, you know, there's this fundamental thing of feeling the giver, feeling the Creator, feeling this, you know, this is why we always say that we're trying to attract the Or Makif, the surrounding light in the study. What's that Or Makif? It's some kind of sensation of the giver. It's some sort of a sensation of that force of bestowal that's constantly existing, constantly giving to us, but which we don't feel. The moment we feel it, to some extent, the moment it ignites us into this whole process. What's the process? The process is feeling that giver. So we're always trying to make that feeling come to us. This is why also in the group, we always talk about the importance of bestowal, the importance of the goal, the importance of the friends, the importance of seeing the Creator in the friends. All these things, it's all in order to ignite that Or Makif to come to us so that we feel it a little bit. Because as a result of that feeling, what happens? Here we have the whole structure laid out for us. The shame comes, we feel shamed. What does the shame bring? It brings about the restriction, which brings about what? It brings about the change of intention, where we receive the pleasure not for our own benefit, but to give contentment to the Creator, to give contentment to that host. And we also see here that nothing changes in terms of the desire to receive itself. The desire to receive always remains a desire to receive. From the beginning, the host was giving to the guest, the Creator was giving to the creature, and the creature is a receiver of pleasure, and the Creator is a giver of pleasure. That always remains, meaning that the action we do is always the same, receiving pleasure, now till Gmar Tikkun. The difference is in the intention, whereas from before we have the intention, or the guest has the intention to receive for itself. Going through that process of feeling the giver, moving through shame, moving through applying that restriction, we change the intention. That's what changes here. And this is why we're always saying, let's think of the intention, let's work on the intention during the study, that we're studying. Why are we studying? To attract that surrounding light, because we want to ignite that sensation of the giver, which pretty much enters us into this whole spiritual process. Okay.
So one more key point that I wanted to come back to here is that we originally, so just imagine the creature was created entirely opposite from the creator. Like the creature is everything the creator is not. And in order to bridge that gap, we were talking about bridging the gap, we have the screen. The screen is this, the masach. The masach is this new thing that comes about from the side of the creature that connects it to the creator. The screen is the key to creation. The whole process of creation, as from the point of view of the creature, is developing the screen. It's like the adapter between the will to receive and the will to bestow. It is the thing that brings the creature together with the creator. It's like the most fundamental thing. I remember when I first heard about it, I'm like, why? That seems so unnatural. Why would you have to create this like artificial thing that connects the creature back to the creator? And then you see that it's so natural. It's like it's like the reason why we're here at all in this world. The reason why we perceive everything around us corporeally, materially, is just in order to come to start building this screen. Is to start like building that bridge between us and the creator. That is the screen. So it's vitally important, and it's like the rest of the deal. Everything that we talk about from here on out is just kind of the action of the screen. The screen moving up and down, purifying, becoming more coarse, and so on. All of the hoops that it jumps through. It's all to build this perfect system, just to bridge the gap between the creator and the creature. Okay, so here we can actually stop for questions.
Yeah.
Before item 16, and then we have one item to go if we have time.
Like another 10 minutes. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so questions. Benjamin was asking earlier when we were still at item 14, how does this diagram relate to the first degree?
What's the first degree?
Okay, maybe Benjamin, can you clarify that question again, like which diagram you're speaking about and which first degree? Until then, we'll move on. Dejan was asking what, I just lost it.
What instigates the zivug daka?
Yeah, what instigates the zivug daka in the masach?
Okay, so this we went over, maybe after you asked. The instigates the zivug daka is a creator imploring the guest, or the host imploring the guest to eat, the guest refusing on the basis of wanting to be like the host. And that refusal becomes then the new kind of the or choser, or the new vessels of reception for the guest.
Lucian's asking, can we say that the distance between the creature, pure reception, versus the creator, pure bestowal, is infinite? If so, the achievement of equivalence of form due to this vast disparity distance is a miracle.
Yes, absolutely. It's a miracle. In the sense that it's above our ability to do it, or it's like it's an unnatural thing. Like in this world, from entering spirituality from corporeality is by definition a miracle. A miracle kind of is much more down to earth. It's not like this amazing thing. It's just like, yeah, it happens to be a miracle. Like the crossing of the Red Sea, it's a miracle. Just textbook miracle. Which just means that the creator has implanted in the process of creation kind of like a gap. Actually, Lucian would understand this as a chemist, that that you would have like it's like an energy gap, Iran would call it a quantum leap, right? You would leap above what you're capable of doing. Let's say you can only jump on a box that's like 1 meter tall, which is pretty high. It's being able to jump a little bit higher than that, something unnatural that's just given by the creator for free. like Deus ex
It's
machina.
important what Dan says, that miracle by definition is that change of, shifting to a state of bestowal from reception. It's actually, that's what it means, in terms of spiritual definitions. And you see this term miracle used in the Kabbalistic texts. For example, the miracle of Hanukkah, which is bringing us into a state of bestowal in order to bestow. The miracle of Purim, which is bringing us into a state of reception in order to bestow. These are terms that are used to define like specific states, not to get confused with our definitions of miracle from what we're coming from. Benjamin is asking, so did the creature or the creator perform this restriction? Who performed the restriction?
The creator performed the restriction, just like the creator is performing everything that's happening, including what we're perceiving right now. But it felt like, from the creature's perspective, it felt like the creature performed it. Just like from our perspective right now, we feel like we're free to do anything that we want. I can lift this thing, I can move the books, I can move, look, it's me, I'm doing it. No, not really.
Alma is asking, what if it is a poison instead of a refreshing beverage?
That would be mean for the host to, although hilarious. And then, well, creature would die and what, like go to heaven, I guess. No, that's a joke. Poison. So, how can we answer this? Do you want to add something about this? Maybe.
Well, look, the whole thing here is that it can't be. We're talking about a set structure here of how the creature creates a situation for how the creator creates a situation for the creature to undergo corrections and move back to it. There's no ifs here. If it could be another way, we're talking about. He lays out a structure that there's this constant giving of pleasure, that we're receivers of pleasure. We undergo a process of gradually coming to feel that we're receivers and that the creator is a giver, and that brings across this sensation of shame, etc., that we move into a restriction. And Dan laid out here the whole what's going on in that whole structure of the restriction with the masach, the orphozer, and then we come back to it. These questions don't really even exist here, like whether it could have been like this or it could have been like that, because we're given the whole structure of how it's all taking place.
If we want to read a little bit further though into the question, maybe it's like, what about in this world? Like, is a refreshing beverage in this world poison? And the answer is yes, it is. Every single pleasure in this world is poison. And every time we enjoy for ourselves, we remain dead. This is, if you've ever wondered what hell is like, this is it. This is as bad as it gets, this world. There's nothing worse than this. Everything is, yeah, everything is a step up from this world. Every step closer to the creator is just being closer to the. That's the definition of heaven and hell actually in Kabbalah, is like proximity to the creator. And right now we're the farthest away that we can be, and we're sustained by this tiny, tiny, tiny light that's burnt, like a pilot light that's just burning just enough to keep us perceiving this world while we kind of remain dead in it.
I like pilot light. Benjamin again. So who created the screen here?
So it's just like before. The creator instilled it in this giant machine that's happening, the process of the creation of the screen. And the creature in itself felt like it was doing the creation of the screen. It felt like it kind of performed Tzimtzum.
Alma again, does masach have anything to do with the awareness?
Yes, everything has to do with awareness. Like this whole process is making the creature, the created being, aware of all the abundance that the creator wishes to bestow. So when the creature becomes aware that it's separated from the creator, then it has to take the next step, which is to become closer to the creator and erect a masach and continue forward from there.
Melida Sierra is asking, will not enjoying for myself, just wanting what we need to live? I think what you mean is, what if I don't, is enjoying for myself just wanting what we need to live?
So that's complicated. And basically, technically in spirituality, when you perform the first restriction, which is our first kind of step into spirituality, you find that all the corporeal pleasures kind of fall away and begin to pale in respect to with respect to spiritual pleasures, and you kind of reduce them down to the necessity. And in fact, this is a process that we go through as, you know, on our way into spirituality, is that we find we naturally reduce our needs down to their bare necessities, but not forcefully. This is very important. Don't try to take your ego and chain it up and like just force it into this little thing. Okay, I'll consume less here, I'll consume less there. It does that. Doing it that way actually has the opposite effect, where the ego grows and grows and grows with pride and you know, humility and, you know, whatever other stuff that it likes. The ego in general, it's like this like endless liquid. It just like fills to consume every space that it can. It's this like horrifying thing. And so Kabbalah, we don't do that in the wisdom of Kabbalah. What we do is we increase the importance of spirituality. That's the goal. So we don't attack the ego directly. We kind of attack it sideways by growing that point in the heart, that singular desire for spirituality above all other desires. That way the ego kind of lets it happen. Because if we try to crush the ego, then it starts fighting back and it gets ugly. But which you'll try to do that anyway, but don't worry about it. The main point is to focus on increasing the importance of spirituality. When we increase that and it becomes greater than all the other desires, then everything else kind of like happens more naturally.
Now let us know if that was your question, Melida, or if we're missing something there. Benjamin again, the creature is unique and united in this diagram.
What does that mean?
I think, well, look, it's actually a good question. Yeah, what do you mean by unique and united? There's definitions of these terms in the wisdom of Kabbalah when it says that the creator is unique and united in everything. Whether the creature is unique and united in this diagram. Did the shattering take place here? Okay. Nice.
No, we're really far from that. Here, yes, it's just I guess, you know, you can think of it just as one singular desire to enjoy the abundance of the Creator. There's no feeling of splitting, of separation or anything here.
Yeah, we're still at the beginning here. The shattering comes a lot later when we still have to go through all the parts of him and worlds all the way down to the world of Atzilut, and then from there, you know, then we start getting into things like the shattering down from the worlds of Abia. We're still not even at the worlds yet. So
one last thing I wanted to mention is that, hopefully this is the last thing, since we're basically out of time, is that if we look at this diagram, the way that this is over here. So what happened is that it seemed to might have just occurred. Now we have the screen kind of around it. From the perspective of the creature, kind of like systematically, what happens is that this happens. You know, like we think like right now there's going to be a bunch of stuff that happens afterwards, but not really. What happens is that, you know, you still have like the light coming from the Creator that's shining into this, that's trying to enter this vessel. And then you have the kind of, sorry, this is not really to scale and not really like a common thing that's drawn, but if you imagine it kind of this way, what happens is that Malchut now, right after the first restriction, the Or Choser comes up, right, to clothe the Or Yashar, or the upper direct light, and then Malchut fills with light. And that's it. That is actually the end of correction. I mean, that's the end of creation. Malchut fills with light. And we're done. So that's from the perspective of the creator. That's how it happens. But the process of this filling with light, of Malchut filling with light, is what we're going to discuss. So this is already done. The whole kind of system took place. Malchut figured out, oh, I need a screen. Okay, so I'm going to clothe the direct light with returning light, and now I can fill, and now I can accept the light for the sake of bestowal, and that's it. Like that's what happened. But the process of actually, bringing the light in gradually is what we're going to discuss. And the reason I say this now is because this process takes place over and over and over and over. This is like a macrocosm of every time we talk about this action, it's always the same thing. It's always, how much can I take for the sake of bestowal? Okay, let me take in that much. Oh, in this new state, how much can I take for the sake of bestowal? Okay, let me take in that much. And it's over and over and over and over on very different levels. And then it discovers kind of like little details here and there. Okay, would you like to add anything in conclusion?
Well, look, we're wrapping up now. Thanks, guys, for all the thanks. Everyone's already thanking the lesson out, so it's great to see. So it's great to be here with you all today. Enjoyed it a lot. Ran will be back with you next week.
And probably Marcos too, if you'll accept it, because I won't be here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I'll be gone next week.
Okay, so we'll talk about that until next week.
Yeah, we'll decide. He's not.
Just a quick thing, because Benjamin added. He asked as well whether, like where we're talking about here, whether the common soul's there. Still not. The common soul also comes afterwards in when Adam HaRishon's created in the world. So we're still not talking at that level yet. Just to get into the structure of it. And also there was a question afterwards quickly as well. It's already all the thanks have eliminated it, but I remember it was whether these new kalim that are created in the Parzufim of Kedusha in item 15, where it's talking about these new kalim that are made in Or Choseh, whether that's more holy or more pure than Bechina Dalet. And it's not really like speaking at that level yet as well. We're just talking about that these kalim. It's best to just try to see it for as it's written, as a principle as well, that just like what's written here, we try to focus in on it and not try to kind of connect all kinds of things that we get from other parts into this. Just that the Or Choseh, the receiving in the Kalim of Or Choseh, means that we apply that intention to a creator above the vessels of reception and above the vessels of reception. And this is considered the purification of the creature. And thank you all. That's about it. It's been very great. Look forward to seeing you all again next week then.
And I'll see you in 2 weeks. And feel free to switch over to the daily lesson if you like. It's ongoing right now. I know Marcos and I will head upstairs. And so we'll see you all soon. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Great lesson. Thank you.